Hello and welcome to this video in which I want to present our neuroscientific research demonstrating an inhibition of information flow into the default mode network during self-reference and reference to others. So this study, which was a joint effort of the Leibniz Institute in Magdeburg and the Charité Berlin, we used a self-referential processing task in which subjects were presented with adjectives describing personality traits. And they were either asked to relate these adjectives to themselves and say whether it applies to them or not, or to relate them to Angela Merkel, the former Chancellor of the Republic of Germany, and say whether it describes her or not, or to engage in syllable counting and indicate via button press whether the word has 2 syllables or not. In total, there were 56 trials per condition in a single run, and we acquired fMRI data from 110 subjects. We then used general linear models to analyze first-level fMRI data and to compare experimental conditions at the second level. When comparing self-reference and reference to others, which can be collectively referred to as the social processing conditions, against the non-social cognitive control task of syllable counting, we found that social processing activates large parts of the default mode network with regions such as the dorsal-medial prefrontal cortex, the posterior cingulate cortex, and the temporoparietal junction, as well as the left inferior frontal gyrus, which includes parts of Broca's language area and is implicated due to words being used as stimuli in this task. When comparing the 2 experimental conditions of interest, we found that self-reference more strongly activates the complex formed by anterior cingulate cortex and ventromedial prefrontal cortex, whereas reference to others more strongly activates the complex formed by posterior cingulate cortex and precuneus. So we took these functional neuroimaging results as motivation for our dynamic causal modeling, or DCM analysis, in which we used 3 network nodes. The left inferior frontal gyrus, which is considered the first semantic processing station of the incoming stimulus material in this task, as well as anterior cingulate and posterior cingulate cortex as representative regions for self-reference and reference to others, respectively. We assumed these 3 regions to be fully connected intrinsically, and we considered social processing to be the driving input activating this network. When it comes to contextual modulations, we allowed both self-reference and reference to others to either modulate or not modulate all the connections leading to the anterior cingulate or posterior cingulate. In detail, this gives us 15 different types of possible modulation by self-reference and 15 different types of possible modulation by reference to others, which together results in 225 dynamic causal models, or DCMs, each of them describing a possible neuronal architecture underlying social processing in the human brain. Our initial hypothesis was that after the network has been activated by social processing, that self-reference would be positively modulating the connection leading to anterior cingulate, and reference to others would be negatively modulating the connection leading to posterior cingulate, with additional negative inhibition between these 2 regions. However, in contrast to our hypothesis, which represents a scenario of independent activation and mutual inhibition, with Bayesian model selection identified a winning model, which represents a scenario of mutual deactivation and no inhibition between these 2 regions. So in other words, the differential effects of self-reference and reference to others in ACC and PCC are not carried by activation during these experimental conditions, but rather by deactivation in the respective other condition, rendering these effects in the default mode network as deactivation effects. We also found a second best model with lower exceedance probability using a slightly different architecture, and we also performed Bayesian model averaging, the results of which are kind of a mixture of the the winning model and the second best model. So with that, I want to say thank you. And if you want to know more, please click on the link in the description to access a free PDF of the paper. Thank you very much.